That's a lot of light up here. Big screen. Thank you for letting me take half an hour of your time. Hopefully when we're done, you will have an idea of how modern technology can solve some of the issues that we are facing when it comes to data, data warehouses, data lakes. The number of names that we need to understand is growing rapidly. But one thing I wanted to bring today was that latest prediction, 2019 from Gartner, when it comes to data management. This is actually the first time that we hear Gartner officially speak about that we need to do something different, because the complexity in the data landscape is growing rapidly. And when we talk about complexity, and I think maybe this is what I can use to take next. This is what we sometimes feel, right? This is how it feels to be working in our industry, working with data. We have an ever-growing demand from the business side. We want more data. We have more use cases for all these data. If we go 5 years back, we talked about we need reports. If we were advanced, we had started to use self-service analytics, Click, Tableau, Power BI. Today, we talk about AI, we talk about machine learning. And when we talk about AI and data, we don't even stop talking about classic data, invoice lines, and customers and products. We talk about pictures. We talk about text. So cognitive services. We want to do some picture recognition. But we also want to use the data we get from doing that to some meaningful within the business. It doesn't, we could take all your pictures and we could try to recognize you, reconcile with LinkedIn, figure out who you all are. Right now I know I'm not complying with GDPR, so we're not going to do it. But if we don't feed that data back into some meaningful value into the business, we just now know who all of you are. So it becomes more and more complex. On the other end, the life cycle of your applications, the different data sources that you have within your organization is also not only growing rapidly, but it's actually also changing faster and faster compared to some years back. When I started in 2006, it was relatively easy. You implemented SAP, it took 3 years, but no problem, because we wouldn't touch it for 10 years. And then we started all over again. This is not how it is today. We talk about shadow IT. What is shadow IT? Well, it could be that IT is hidden in the basement, so in the dark, so they are in the shadow. Could also be all the IT systems that you are buying within your line of business just with a credit card. All the cloud applications. And sometimes we don't even know how many we have. But we do know that we actually have valuable information stored in all these systems that no one have a complete picture. And then we go down to IT. Now IT look like this picture. Because we ask IT, can you get all my data? Yes, but I don't know what systems you have. I don't know how to connect to them. What we really want is to find a way to satisfy the need in the business and become data-driven at the speed of the business, not the speed of IT. We want to be able to explore and utilize every single new invention that comes out there that can help us analyze or get value out of our data. And from my perspective, we want to walk on this journey instead. Why do we go and push a stone up the hill if we don't have to? And one thing that is super interesting to me is when it comes to building out the data estate, data warehouse, data lake, on-prem, in the cloud, the way we approach it is roughly the same way we have been doing it for 30 years. Not a big difference. And that means that we keep pushing up the stone, but we don't have the time anymore. We need to find another way. We need to be able to get to a point that whatever, and this is just a symbol of AI, whatever new use case that pops up within our business that we could utilize, that we are ready. Why do we have to wait? So I cannot see anyone because I get all the light, but if I could, how many have a smartphone? I guess everyone has a smartphone, right? And the funny thing is, you have your smartphone and you have apps on your smartphone. I guarantee you don't think about how does it work? What cloud is it running on? Where's the data coming from? But what you do care about is that if the response time is too slow, you go into the App Store or the Android store and figure out there must be another app that can help me do exactly the same thing that I'm doing right now. So we talk a lot about new use cases. We talk about cognitive services. But what will we talk about tomorrow? What is the next? We don't know. We simply do not know what the next use case for all our data is. We do know that our data is some of the most valuable assets we have. Because everyone can produce a certain machine or a certain good. But how do you become super competitive? Both from a go-to-market perspective, but also from an innovation perspective. It all points back to data. Those of you who are the best to utilize your data the fastest will also be more competitive. Most places I travel in the world also have a slightly different problem when it comes to utilizing data and modernize the data platform. And that's lack of resources. The number of people who have the skills to help all of us to develop solutions and gain value from all the data is not growing as fast as the demand from the business, as the demand from all the new technology that we are presented to every day. So one way to solve that is to take a different approach. To look at your data estate, look at your collection and cleansing and everything you have to do around your data from a different perspective, based on automation. So those of you that actually are building out data warehouses, data lakes, and machine learning stuff today, you're most likely very familiar that it actually takes up to 80% of the time just to fix the data. To make sure that I have access to the data, that I have the right quality on my data. But that's not adding value. So, I will try to explain. It's not a product presentation, but I will take this approach to explain the journey that we are all on and where I see that we will eventually go if we want to be the most competitive place we can get to. So this looks very familiar. I call it the traditional approach. On the left, a lot of different data sources. On the right, use cases. And if we look at how we used to do this when we were trying to do self-service, we got spaghetti, right? All different kind of front-end analytics applications, solutions that were by themselves connected to a lot of different data sources. Going 30 or 20 or 30 years back, this was what you got when you had that colleague you went down to. He was the expert with Excel. So I had no idea, but I could get a workbook full of data. He knew how to connect to all the different data sources we had. That guy we also lost because now it's cloud solutions. So you cannot just use the ODBC connection, and it's not that easy as it used to be. So everybody figured out this is probably not long-term sustainable. So what did we do? We started to put in some staging layers in between, starting to figure out how do we combine some of this. So good step on the journey, right? But as complexity was growing, we needed more and more tools, different tools to accomplish, to building these data warehouses, data layers, data hubs, data marts, whatever term we prefer. Because, yes, we need some tools to actually extract all the data. We also need to figure out, okay, what about our data quality? Maybe Iceland is slightly different from the rest of the world, so you have only perfect quality within all your systems. No employees is misusing any CRM, ERP system, forgetting to put anything. Reality is that, data quality is not a one thing. It's something that is ongoing. We also now have GDPR. Wonderful little law that just makes it so much more complex to handle the use case of our data, to handle our data warehouse. And actually makes it almost impossible to be compliant if you go direct to a data source. Because it's not only about what you have access to of data, but it's also what have you consent from the owner of the data, the person, to actually do with the data. So it becomes more and more complex, and the classic approach even today is we just buy more tools. I need master data management tools. I need documentation tools, ETL tools, quality tools. It's just growing and growing and growing. And it's become too complex. So even if you buy new tools, and they look more modern, they might be smarter than the old tools, it's still up to you to figure out how do I stitch all these tools together. But if all the stuff on the left side is changing faster and faster and faster, and on the right side it's changing faster and faster and faster, oh, and by the way, in the middle as a software vendor, we also deploy new versions, new functionality faster and faster and faster. See the picture? Becomes slightly complicated. It works. It works every day. People are doing this every day. It just simply takes too long. 12 to 18 months to build an enterprise data warehouse, data lake solution based on this approach. So we need to do something else. We need to take an approach where we say we don't develop our data platform based on what we know today, the use cases we know today. We develop our data platform based on freeing up the data to the business, based on the notion that we don't know what the business will ask tomorrow. For those of you who have been working in this space for a long time and are familiar, for instance, with the Kimball star schema idea, we have to remember that it's super powerful for the user to understand a star schema. This is my invoice lines, this is my customers and my products, and I can work with this. Super easy. We just have to remember why it was invented. It was actually not invented to make it easy for you. It was invented because we had a lot of data in certain industries, but we did not have enough compute power. We did not have enough memory, and we didn't have enough storage. So we needed to find a way only to bring in the data that was absolutely needed to serve the reporting needs that we knew the business had. And then we were running around in circles, trying to, with the backlog, trying to figure out how do we actually then deliver what the business was asking for. We spent the last 10 years arguing in the industry if we should kill all this, if I should just, quit my job, Because we don't need a data lake, we don't need a data warehouse. Now we have Click to Blue on Power BI and similar tools, right? So we don't need anything in between. People also argue that we don't need the data warehouse and the data lake because we can have virtualization, so that we shouldn't move the data around. From me, that's BS, right? We need it. Given that these are changing, that also means that they disappear. So my old history data disappears. If you have a cloud application and you stop using it and stop paying your subscription, it's gone. Your data is gone. That's reality. You need a place to store your data so that you can keep also the data even if you don't have the application anymore. Virtualization will not help you on that. Going direct on the data source will just, make everything break and your data is gone. So one of the things that we argue, and I argue and have devoted my life to, is that we need, first of all, IT to move from gatekeeper to shopkeeper. It's really not about how do we protect our data. I'm not saying that security is not important, it is, I will get back to that. But it's a mindset. How do we actually expose all the data we have to the business users? In a compliant manner, yes. And how do we make sure that we don't have to touch our data platform unless we actually have a change on the left side? Because that's possible, but it takes a shift in mindset. Not only on how we address the implementation of our data platform, but also how we design the data models that we want to use on our data platforms. I'm a firm believer that you need to have all data available in 3 different formats. You need to, in any business, needs to have a place where we have access to all our raw data. Very often in a modern implementation, that's on a cloud data lake, because it's fast, it's easy, and it's cheap. Cheapest way to store all your data. The raw data is useful for a lot of different use cases. One of them is AI. There's a lot of the AI initiatives that people are taking out there that basically needs access to all the raw data. But if we have a highly paid data scientist, why should that person waste their time trying to figure out and get the data every time they have to do a new algorithm? There should just be one place that they go in, and that's it. But we also still need the data warehouse. I refer it always to as the modern data warehouse, and that has to do with the design. We need a much more modern design. And I spent quite some time talking to Barry Devlin, who in '85 invented the concept of data warehousing before Kimball in '89 came up with the star schema, on how do we actually develop a design pattern for a modern data warehouse. The idea behind is that you need to have every single information you have around a customer, for instance, in one table. You cannot select 10 attributes on the customer because you don't know what is the next attribute that the business wants. So why don't we just flatten it out and give them everything we have? We put security on so that you only have access to what you're allowed to see, all the way down to row level, of course. But why do we, just give them everything? Make sure that the golden record is fixed. Make sure that the quality is in place so that the business instantly know that they can trust the information. It's possible. And then we need the semantic models. That's for people like me. The C-level, because we have no idea. We need even more simplified data models that we can take and use. And we also need to make sure that we can support an organization that has not standardized on a specific front-end tool. I meet so many customers that say, yeah, but we are all Power BI, or we are all Click, and that's the only thing we have. And then you take a walk down the marketing department, and suddenly you have 5 laptops with Tableau. And you ask, where did that come from? And they said, I don't know. Because that's shadow IT also when it comes to analytics. Get a new employee, I'm used to use this tool, that's what I continue to do. So if we try to dig a little deeper into why do we need this? We need the operational data exchange to make sure that we have all the raw data. You can put it on-prem, on a SQL, yes. Put it on the cloud, SQL or Lake. But you get to the point where you have all your data in one place. Now some of you will argue, yes, but we already have that. You know, we took the patchwork approach. We had a team, they built a data lake to us with all the data, and it took them 12 months. The whole idea behind a Discovery Hub approach is that it's a combined platform. It's based on automation and it's based on AI. So building a data lake takes 2 weeks on Azure, regardless of what data sources you have. Fully documented. No need to write code. So the whole idea and what we try to free up the resources for the BI teams, for the data scientists, is why don't we just model it out based on metadata, based on connectivity, and make sure that the system can figure out, okay, we have a schema change. Okay, but why do I need a person to figure that out? I need to optimize my performance. I need to optimize my load. Yes, but what we do every time to do that is repeatable work. So anything that can be repeated, anything that we do, we make an observation as a human being, and based on that, we do the same thing every time. That means, to me, it can be automated. Then we don't need people to do that. Just like the app on your phone. But we also need to build out the modern data warehouse. But we need to do it in a combined platform, and the reason we need to do that is we need to make sure that we have complete traceability and data lineage from the raw data, from the data source, to the raw data, to the modern data warehouse. If we continue building silos of data, we are not getting the value of modernizing our data platform. Modernizing is not getting new tools. Modernizing sometimes is to take a complete different approach to how do I actually do this? And move the reasoning why we do all this into the business. I have met so many customers who talk about that from an IT perspective, that we are building out a data lake. BMW is a very good example. They spent 100 million euro building a data lake, and 5 years later they shut it down. Because there were no business value. So when we talking about automation, when we talk about modernization of our data estate and data platform, always think of it from the business perspective. Why do we have all these data warehouses and data lakes? What is it we're trying to accomplish? How do we add value to the business? And sorry, we don't add value by having a data warehouse. We add value with what we can do because we have a data warehouse. The data warehouse in itself, well, it's just a cost. But it's a necessity to be able to empower the business to do what they want. And then we need the semantic for a lot of different reasons. What I started to mention before was that if you have 3 different front ends that are going to be used within your business, Do you really think it's needed to develop the same report 3 times? Today it is. But if you put in a semantic model with all the data model and all the calculations and all the logic that you need for sales or finance reporting in your company, and you do it in a platform like Discovery Hub, then the same model can be instantly used in all the front ends. We actually infuse it from within Discovery Hub into the front ends. You don't even have to do anything. You just have to make sure how do you want it to look. So now you have all the data, you have to do the design. I got the yellow card. And one of the real important thing that we have to add is not only the cost saving and the time saving. We can document with very big customers around the world that it is at least 10 times faster to build based on automation, based on a platform, compared to building out with a number of tools. Of course, there's a cost to a platform, but there's also cost to a tool. There's also cost to people. But more important for me is, what is the cost of waiting 6 months to be able to do something that's important to your business? If you can wait 6 months with a request from within the business without any concern at all, I would argue as the CEO that we shouldn't do it. If it's not important enough that we need to get it done now, it's not important at all. That's an argument, right? But we also need to make sure that we are compliant per design. And that is actually very difficult and very complicated if you're stitching a lot of different tools together, because I haven't met a single data warehouse BI developer who loves to write documentation in Word. Maybe there is one out there, I don't know. So we need to make sure that we have all taken care of all the automation, the documentation based on automation. And we need to make sure that we actually know from data source to use case in semantic model what's going on, that it doesn't break. And again, that's the value with a platform mindset when you're building out your data estate. Because if you have, again, silos, I have built a data warehouse over here, I built a data lake over here, and I did some click Tableau over here. Okay, but how is it actually tying together? Nobody knows. And for those who actually work based on GDPR, we need to know, because we need to be able to answer the question, who has access to what data and what are they using them for? I'm sometimes a little provocative and claim that every hand-built BI implementation in the EU GDPR world out there is non-compliant and will never be compliant. Because we don't have enough documentation, we don't know what's going on. But we also need to make sure that we can control security from a business perspective. You all have your own rules, and based on country and culture, we have different rules. How much data do we want to share? This is also a political decision within in any company. Who can see what? Can I see, as a sales rep, can I see the numbers for the other sales rep, or can I only see my own numbers? What is your strategy of using data? All that and compliance needs to be put together in one place. And it needs to be done only once. So if you put security in on the ODX, on the Operational Data Exchange, of course, you shouldn't have to redo it. It needs to flow up. We've done it once. The PII has been defined, so it's done. It needs to flow around. Again, difficult if you have silos. So our approach, our vision, and what we can see is going to free up 80% of the resources so that they can start doing something else, is to have a different mindset, take a complete different approach. And we might not be the only one who is doing this, so I'm more arguing about the approach, the mindset behind. Do it in a different way. And take the journey to the cloud. right? It's not a final decision. And I think that's my final remark, because now I will get the red card. If you build based on Discovery Hub, start on-prem, it's a one-click migration to the cloud. It's not a final decision. So anyone who has that concern, should I do A or B? Well, start on-prem, you feel safe, and move it to the cloud when you're good and ready for it. And the rest is just marketing, right? Thank you.